As my wife can probably attest, I'm probably not the ideal minister to preach about anger. I'm afraid that in addition to inheriting my grandfather's name, I also inherited a good deal of my grandfather's propensity for anger and a quick temper. I lived with my grandparents as a child for a while after my mother died, and I remember quite well being booted off the front porch of that old country house because my grandfather had told me time and time again not to slam the back door when I left the house. Well, I believe he finally reminded me with a square lift from the boot of his foot. Now there are, of course, controls that insist in our management of anger. There are many seminars and classes you can take now about anger management. There's a story I heard about a husband who had this habit of mistreating his wife with angry outbursts, and he asked her, he said, "Listen, when I get mad at you, you never fight back." He said, "How do you manage to control your anger?" The wife said, "I clean the toilet." The husband said, somewhat confused, "How does that help?" The wife replied, "I use your toothbrush." There's an old proverb that says, "A quick-tempered man does foolish things." Most disasters resulting from anger are caused by the fact that we fail to think about the most mature ways to handle such situations. Now, in today's gospel lesson, Jesus touches on the problem of anger that affects many of us. Most of us, I'm sure, have had angry thoughts or even had trouble forgiving someone for a brief time. But the real problem comes when we harbor this resentment over a period of time and we begin to nurse this grudge. And Jesus is telling us that if you continue to do things like that, you are certainly on the road to disaster. Now, you probably will not murder someone, but your anger oftentimes can be just as consuming. You may not commit murder, but oftentimes murder begins in this very innocent way. The person who's murdered someone else has started where you might be now. Sometimes the only difference between someone who has actually committed murder might be the courage to carry it out. Sometimes the difference might be the timing or the opportunity, and sometimes that only difference might have been our access to a weapon or means to commit a dreadful act. I don't know about you, but that's kind of scary to me. I read these newspaper accounts of people getting killed in gunfights and things like that. I don't think that's so much necessarily the reasoning behind gun control. I think it's more about people who just get angry, and as a quick way to solve that burst of anger, they just pull out a gun and shoot somebody. But anger may be a small thing to many people, but it's a very, very big thing for lots of other people. And Jesus is telling us that this unsolved anger can be a truly big thing, and giving place to anger and bitterness is still a sin, and you are liable to the judgment if you let that kind of thing continue in your life. Believe me, God sees everything we say and do. Jesus reserves some of his harshest words for those who mismanage anger. He made this radical statement that no doubt triggered some murmuring in the crowd when Jesus said, "Therefore, if you're offering your gift at the altar and there remember your brother has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar and go back and reconcile yourself with your neighbor." We will read sometimes the very fine print that comes before the service of Holy Communion, right before we have communion. There's a sentence in there that says, if the priest knows of someone who holds anger against his brother, he may not give them communion. I've only done that once. thought about that a long time during my ministry. We are implored to be in love and charity with our neighbor. And we're supposed to do that before we come to this altar and receive that sacrament. We simply cannot appear before our Lord with anger in our hearts. Now I want to say a few words this morning about three kinds of anger. First of all, there is what I call impulsive anger. That kind of anger that happens when we momentarily snap and react to something that disagrees with us. Such things as hitting your thumb with a finger. Hitting your hammer, hitting your finger with a hammer. Sometimes discourteous driver, I was driving someplace the other day and some guy on a motorcycle must be going 100 an hour, he was weaving in and out of front of the cars. That kind of angers a person. Or just plain obnoxious people. There's an old saying that goes something like, when anger arises, bite your tongue. Well, I'm afraid that if most people followed that advice, there'd be a lot of injured tongues. Jesus tells us that sometimes, even with those innocent outbursts of anger, we could be in trouble. There's a story about a young girl who was writing a paper for school and came to her father and said, "Dad, what's the difference between anger and exasperation?" The father replied, "It's mostly a matter of degree." He said, "I'm going to show you what I mean." So with that, the father went into the telephone and dialed a random number. The man who answered the phone, he said, "Hello, is Melvin there?" Well, the man answered, "There's no one living here by the name of Melvin. Why don't you look up the number before you dial it?" So he said, the father to his daughter, that man was not a bit angry with our call. He was probably very busy with something, and we annoyed him. Now watch this. The father dialed the same number again. "Hello, is Melvin there?" he asked. "Now look here," came the heated reply. "You just called this number and I told you there is no Melvin here. You've got an awful lot of nerve calling me again." Well, the receiver was slammed down hard. The father turned to his daughter and said, "You see, now that was anger. Now I'll show you what exasperation means." He called the same number one more time and a violent voice roared, "Hello!" The father calmly said, "Hello, this is Melvin. Have there been any calls for me lately?" This word raka that we mentioned in the Holy Gospel this morning is actually found this is the only place it's found in the New Testament. It's a word that has a rather difficult way of translating. The gist of the word is this, that you are saying something with great contempt towards another person for some kind of outward reason. And that leads us to the second kind of anger, that of contrived anger. This anger usually lasts over a period of time and is dangerous in that it not only injures the person to whom the anger is directed, but the person who's holding this anger as well. If we find ourselves stuck in that kind of angry position, then we have to find a way to open our hearts and take responsibility for our feelings. And prayer is the only powerful way that I know to open up hearts when they're stuck in anger. When you can sincerely pray for spiritual help in opening your heart and taking responsibility for the things you're saying and doing, then and then only will the Holy Spirit find some way to support you when you really need that kind of help. Paul Arbonite, writing in Health and Wellness magazine, describes contrived anger as planning, scheming, devising reasons to be angry, like in an out-of-control temper tantrum, or when you wear down the other person to lose control, when you let the anger build up over a period of time, or even imagine the wrongful deed never really took place. And Jesus warns us about that anger. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. We find those words in James, the how-to book for Christianity. And finally, there is that fatal anger that arises and ends in rage and physical violence. Jesus tells us that murder begins as an attitude in the heart, and our anger grows if we fail to find a way to reconcile. Anger is deadly. Fatal anger, like suicidal depression, is a mental illness, and that's why there's so much attention paid nowadays to anger management and trying to help people get through these uncontrolled outbursts that really leads to very bad situations. Jesus was trying to point out to us today the root of the problem, which is the human heart. And simply explaining to us that unholy anger, unholy speech, envy, and jealousy are all about the same as murder. And he wants us to understand we must speak not in a way that kills people, but in a way that builds them up. Why? Because God will, in the end, not only judge our deeds, but our words in the condition of our hearts. Anger will affect you spiritually, physically, psychologically, and socially. I'm sure most of you have watched the movie Forrest Gump. I think I've watched Forrest Gump so many times that I almost know the lines of the movie by heart. You know that in the movie, Forrest Gump had this long-standing relationship with his good friend Jenny. In one scene, when both of them are grown and Jenny is just beginning to retreat from her lifestyle of sex and drugs, they're walking down this dirt road, and soon they come to this shack where little Jenny lived as a girl, in the shack where she experienced abuse. And as they come to it, her face contorts with hatred and anger, and she reaches down and picks up a rock and flings it towards the shack. And it chips off some of the already deteriorating paint, and she picks up another rock and throws it again, and this time crashing through an already broken window. And she picks up another and hurls them in a fit of anger towards that old house. And finally she falls exhausted to the ground. Forrest gazes down at her and says, I guess sometimes there's just not enough rocks. We've all been there. We've all thrown those stones, situations, and people, members, and it's never really relieved the agony, destroyed the misery, or lessened our anguish. So Jenny's question is ours. When throwing stones won't work, what do we do? The answer to that is really quite simple. We pray to God for patience, for peace of mind, for guidance, for the ability to love, to forgive. Listen, Jesus never promised us that life would be easy. He simply promised us that He would always be there for us.